Good morning, gentlemen. It's a wonderful day, and I'm going to tell you something very interesting. I'm going to tell you something about an incident that took place on 19th September 1965. That was the time when the Indo-Pakistan War was on, and a civilian aircraft carrying the Chief Minister of Gujerat, Mr. Balwant Rai Mehta, and his wife, piloted by an ex-Air Force officer, squadron leader Jahangir engineer, and co-pilot Precy Dcosta, took off from Ahmedabad en route to the border district, and on the way they were intercepted by a Pakistani F-86 and shot down. It's a very simple tale, but there are a lot of things and circles which involved. I got an interest into this incident basically because I was interacting with the daughter of Dcosta, who was 10 months old at that time in 1965 when her father went down with the plane. He was only 28. So she is lived with this memory for the last 57 years, and somehow I had some interaction with her and I came to about this incident, and I thought I should highlight a few points here. The first point which I'd like to highlight is that the plane should not have flown into the battle zone at that time. War was on, there was nothing like an international border, and it was dangerous to fly a civilian unarmed plane, and more so when permission had not been given as per my information from the operation headquarters in Bombay. But still the Chief Minister insisted and the plane took off. The second part of the story is that Pakistanis on the radar saw the plane, and a young officer, I will not mention any names here, took off and with instructions to shoot the plane down. At that time, on the ground, the Pakistanis were aware that a plane was in Indian airspace. All the same, since it was war, they thought it's a good idea to shoot the plane down, thinking that it's a reconnaissance plane. So far justified. But what happened is when the pilot took off, he came and he saw the plane. He found it was a Beechcraft, an 8-seater American plane, and which is quite popular all over the world. And he knew it was an unarmed plane and it was a civil plane. And now I have come to know that the pilot of the plane, who was a veteran Air Force officer, and squadron leader engineer, he wiggled the flaps of the plane. This is a signal asking for mercy. And what did this man do? He acknowledges it, but he still decided to go ahead and shoot. He did refer the matter to headquarters, who insisted they shoot. So he carried out the shooting. Now one can say he was obeying the rules of orders by the superior or anything like that, but the fact remains his better judgment, and he has got some remorse because after some 46 years he wrote to the daughter of squadron leader engineer expressing his regrets and condolences. It's got no meaning really, because at that time he was the man who was to take the decision, and if he'd seen it was an unarmed plane, he shouldn't have shot on it. The command to shoot an unarmed civilian plane is an act of war crime. It's a war crime. And this is precisely what this man did. He says he had to obey, otherwise he would in court martial. Nothing would have happened. He would have probably gone back, got a reprimand or something, and that's all. The matter would have ended. But that inbuilt hatred of the Pakistanis for India is what was the bone of contention. Now, what we must understand that Pakistan was created out of India on the two-nation theory. Now, the two-nation theory has been proved to be defunct, but at that time, a theory was floated by the British, who wanted the divide and rule, and Muhammad Ali Jinnah, that Muslims and Hindus are separate and they should be having their separate nations. So Pakistan became an Islamic state, and that is very sad, because the population of Pakistan, which is about 30% minorities in 1948, is reduced now to 3%. So you can well imagine what's happening there. While in India, the minorities are thriving, but even here, the main minority, that is the Muslims, have not really integrated with the Indian culture and ethos. That's a different story. Coming down to the plane, this lady carried out her own research, because when she was only 10 months old when her father died, and obviously she was keen to know what happened. She approached the air headquarters, who were very considerate, even the AOC Bhuj, and then she went to to Gujarat, and pinpointed the plane where the plane had been shot down. There the villagers have made a small memorial for all the people who died, including Balwant Rai Mehta, the Chief Minister of Gujerat, and his wife who had died, and the other 6 members of the passengers of the plane, including aircrew. Now, what to say about it? The memorial, I am told, is in very poor shape. It needs a lot of repair work, and funds are not coming, and there is an apathy of the government. We can keep blaming Pakistan. Yes, they contravened the rules of war, and what the Pakistani pilot did was definitely a war crime. But from the Indian side, I must point out that the Indian government did nothing for the people who died in that plane. They died because there was a war on, and they were a war casualty, and their next of kin should have been looked after by the government with money and material, which they didn't do. I don't think any of these people got any compensation or anything, which is not proper. And this memorial, which is in very poor shape, also needs to be refurbished. And it's about time that the government took up, the repair of this monument. I call it a monument. Make it presentable and let it be publicized, and let the people go around and see it and come to know that there are so many other people also who died in the 65 war. The Indians have a penchant of not honoring their dead. I'll give you an example. 62 war with China, we lost 3,000 soldiers, almost. And when the anniversary of the war came in December this year, there's not a person who went to pay any homage, mention anything about the men who died, the Chinese, in the China war. So it's like something like you have forgotten, bhul gaye, forgotten about it. That is not the correct way to honor. And there are a lot of people who are talking that just like this Beechcraft aircraft was shot down in 65, forget about it, it's all over. Nothing is over. I tell you, China, the United States, Russia, they never forget or forgive the people who have killed any of their citizens. At that time itself, the Indian government should have taken up the case to the International Tribunal in The Hague. And this flying officer, whoever he was, should have been chastised. But nothing happened. It was thought to be an act of war, and that's the end of it. And why do we have the War Crimes Tribunal? The defense of the pilot that he had fired on this unarmed plane because he got the orders from the superior, some wing commander or somebody, doesn't stand to reason. You must recollect that during the Nuremberg trials, the German generals had the same plea. They said, we obeyed orders. When accepted by the International Tribunal, with the results, many of the top German generals like General Jodl and others were hanged to death. Many got 20 years imprisonment. Same thing happened in the Tokyo Tribunal. The defense that I had got the order, I did it, will not be acceptable, because if it contravenes the rules of war, that is killing unarmed civilians, shooting down unarmed planes, passenger planes, and this is what the PAF did. The PAF has a reputation for doing these things actually, and that's the sad part of it. And the army is worse. It goes around as an occupation army like what they did in Bangladesh. You have well known, carried out mass rapes, murders. It's all documented in the UN reports. Well, what can we say about an enemy who doesn't want to reconcile with India? And it keeps on harping on the fact that the Muslims in India are slaves, subjugated. And our Muslims also don't want to come out of their cocoon to integrate with their life. They want to have their own personal law, you just name it. I don't think the minority community in India has reconciled to the fact that you cannot stop the march of India forward. And the Pakistanis, by doing this act in 1965, really spoiled their copybook, They did the same thing in Kashmir. They were invaded there, and though they had signed a standstill agreement with the Maharaja, but this is one of the facts of history. And as far as this incident is concerned, it's a footnote. It's not a geostrategic event, but it shows the mindset of the people of the Pakistan Air Force, and that means the Pakistan Armed Forces, ipso facto. I'm sorry, gentlemen, that this thing took place, and I'm sorrier still that the persons who survived the death of their kin, the daughters and children, they got nothing from the government. Even this memorial is in poor shape. I'm giving below a reference and Twitter handle of Precy Dcosta, who is the daughter of one of the crew who was killed when he was only 28. I wonder if you can channelize the government, sign a petition, and see that some funds are made available to make this memorial really memorable. Okay, gentlemen, I close now. Thank you very much. And I will say, Jai Hind, God bless.